Walk into any British pub on a summer evening, and the cider taps are gleaming like treasure, but half of them are serving mass-produced rubbish that's got more in common with alcopops than proper scrumpy. We're exposing the 10 British ciders you should pour straight down the drain and celebrating the 10 that actually taste like apples instead of sugar syrup. Some of these will proper shock you. Strongbow dark fruit isn't cider. It's what happens when a laboratory tries to create something for 18-year-olds who don't actually like the taste of cider but want to get drunk in a beer garden. It's bright purple like Ribena, tastes like someone dissolved a packet of Haribo in cheap cider, and it's got about as much connection to actual apples as a wimpy burger has to actual beef. Every park bench and bus shelter in Britain is decorated with empty cans of this stuff, which tells you exactly who's drinking it and why it's 4% fruit flavouring and 96% regret, served ice cold so you can't taste how awful it actually is. Your daughter probably drinks dark fruit at Wetherspoons because it doesn't taste like cider, and it's cheaper than vodka, but that doesn't make it acceptable. Real cider is made from apples, fermented, pressed, aged with care, but dark fruit is made from concentrate, artificial flavouring, and corporate cynicism. Strongbow used to be half decent, back when your dad drank it in the 70s, but they've spent the last 20 years chasing the youth market by making increasingly ridiculous, flavoured versions that have nothing to do with cider whatsoever. If you want dark fruit, eat a plum. If you want cider, drink literally anything else on this list. Frosty Jacks is what you get when someone decides that cider should be as cheap as possible, as strong as possible, and taste doesn't matter because the people buying it aren't drinking for pleasure. It comes in massive 3-litre bottles. It's 7.5% strength, and it costs about the same as a decent loaf of bread. Every corner shop in Britain stocks it next to the White Lightning and Special Brew, which should tell you everything about its intended market. It tastes like someone fermented apple juice in a bathtub, added industrial alcohol, and called it cider, because that's basically what it is. This is problem drinking in a plastic bottle. The stuff that's caused so much trouble that some communities have tried to ban it. Your dad never drank Frosty Jacks because in his day, if you wanted cheap cider, you at least got something that tasted vaguely like apples. This tastes like nail polish remover with a hint of fruit. The only people drinking Frosty Jacks are students making catastrophic decisions, blokes who've given up entirely, or teenagers in parks who don't know any better. If you're drinking this by choice, you need to have a serious word with yourself about where your life's heading. Blackthorn used to be everywhere in the 80s and 90s. Every pub had it, every off-licence stocked it, and it was what you drank when you fancied cider but didn't want to pay Strongbow prices. But somewhere along the way, it went from being acceptable cheap cider to being absolutely dreadful cheap cider. The kind of thing you only drink if there's literally nothing else available, and you're desperate. It's thin, watery, slightly metallic, and tastes like someone tried to make cider from apple-flavoured water and gave up halfway through. The can design still looks vaguely traditional with its countryside imagery, but that's just packaging covering up disappointment. Your dad probably drank Blackthorn at some point in the 80s because it was half the price of proper cider and twice as available. But even he'll admit it was never actually good, just cheap and alcoholic, which was all that mattered on a Friday night. Nowadays you can barely find it, because even the big pub chains have realised nobody actually wants it, when there are better options at similar prices. If you're still drinking Blackthorn in 2025, you're either stuck in 1987, or you genuinely can't taste the difference between good and bad cider. And either way, it's time to move on to something that actually tastes like it was made from apples instead of regret. Kopparberg isn't even British, it's Swedish, but it's absolutely everywhere in Britain, taking up half the cider shelf in every pub and supermarket, despite tasting nothing like actual cider. It comes in every flavour imaginable: strawberry and lime, passion fruit, elderflower, mixed fruit, everything except actual proper apple cider, which tells you everything about what they think of their customers. It's basically alcoholic fruit juice for people who don't like cider, don't like beer, and probably don't like alcohol, but need something to drink in the pub that doesn't make them look like they're on the orange juice. Your daughter probably drinks Kopparberg because it's sweet, it's colourful, and it doesn't taste like alcohol, which are exactly the reasons you shouldn't be drinking it if you're over the age of 25. The bottles look fancy with their frosted glass and minimalist labels, but that's just Scandinavian design, covering up the fact that what's inside is basically fruit shoot for adults. Real cider tastes like apples because it's made from apples. Kopparberg tastes like a chemistry experiment that someone decided to market to people who think Carling is too sophisticated. If you want flavoured drinks, have a cocktail. If you want cider, drink cider. Kopparberg is neither. Now this one's complicated, so stay with me. Magners in bottles served over ice on a sunny afternoon is perfectly acceptable. We'll get to that. But Magners on draft served through those stupid ice machines that every pub installed 15 years ago is absolutely dreadful. It comes out so cold that you can't taste anything except vague apple flavouring and sweetness, which is exactly the point. The cold temperature covers up the fact that draft Magners taste nothing like the bottled version. It's been watered down, carbonated to death, and served at temperatures that would make an Eskimo wince. Also, pubs can charge premium prices for something that costs them pennies. Your son probably orders Magners on tap because the ads made it look sophisticated with that ice and the Irish branding, but he's basically paying £4 for a pint of alcoholic slush. The whole over-ice marketing campaign was brilliant, genuinely changed how Britain drank cider. But the draft version is a cynical cash grab that's trading on the bottled version's reputation while delivering something completely different. Magners on tap is what happens when accountants get involved in cider production, when profit margins matter more than quality, when marketing trumps actual brewing. Stick to the bottles if you must drink Magners, because the draft version is just expensive disappointment served extra cold. Somersby is another foreign imposter, this time Danish, pretending to be proper cider while actually being flavoured alcoholic apple juice for people with the taste buds of a 10-year-old. It's owned by Carlsberg, which should tell you everything about quality expectations, and it comes in more flavours than a pick and mix counter. Apple, pear, blackberry, watermelon, everything except anything that tastes remotely like actual traditional cider. The ads show Swedish countryside and happy young people having sophisticated drinks. But the reality is sugar water with alcohol that's designed to get 20-somethings drunk without them noticing they're drinking something absolutely awful. The problem with Somersby isn't just that it's bad cider, it's that it's not cider at all. It's a completely different drink that's stolen the word cider for marketing purposes. Your dad would be horrified if he knew you were calling this cider when real cider is made from proper apples, fermented naturally, and tastes like the countryside instead of a chemistry lab. Every supermarket stocks Somersby now because it's cheap to produce, markets itself brilliantly to young people, and makes decent profit margins. But none of those reasons have anything to do with quality or taste. If you're drinking Somersby thinking you're drinking cider, you're not. You're drinking alcoholic tango with delusions of grandeur. If you're still with us after watching 6 ciders get absolutely destroyed, hit that like button, drop a comment telling us which one we've got wrong, and subscribe because we've got 14 more ciders to cover. The next 4 might shock you even more than these first 6. Old English cider has a name that makes it sound traditional and heritage-focused, but it's actually mass-produced rubbish, owned by Aston Manor, that tastes like someone tried to make cider as cheaply as humanly possible. While still being able to legally call it cider, it comes in massive plastic bottles, usually 3 litres. It's about 5.5% strength, and it costs less than a fancy coffee, which tells you everything about quality expectations. The taste is thin, watery, vaguely apple-flavoured, in the same way that apple-scented air freshener is apple-flavoured, and it leaves a chemical aftertaste that lingers for hours, like a bad decision. This is white cider territory, the stuff that's caused so much social problems that councils have tried to restrict its sale in certain areas. Your dad never drank Old English because it didn't exist in his day. This kind of industrial-strength cheap cider is a relatively modern invention, designed specifically to get people drunk as cheaply as possible. The Old English name is pure marketing nonsense, trying to make you think this is traditional countryside cider, when actually it's made in massive factories using concentrate and industrial processes that have nothing to do with traditional cider making whatsoever. If you're drinking Old English, you're not drinking for taste or enjoyment, you're drinking to forget, and that never ends well. Right, controversial one here. Thatcher's makes genuinely brilliant cider, and we'll get to that, but Katie has been completely ruined in recent years by going mainstream original. Katie was lovely. 4%, easy drinking, gentle apple flavour, perfect summer refreshment. But as Thatcher's got bigger and Katie became their volume brand, something changed. Modern Katie is sweeter, blander, more mass market than it used to be, designed to appeal to the broadest possible audience, rather than to people who actually know good cider. It's been smoothed out, made safer, turned into something your daughter orders at Wetherspoons, rather than something proper. Cider drinkers respect. Your mate probably still drinks, Katie thinking it's the same as it was 10 years ago. But it isn't. It's been sacrificed on the altar of market share and volume sales. The tragedy is that Thatcher's still makes absolutely brilliant cider. Gold, haze, vintage. Proper Somerset cider that respects tradition and tastes stunning. But Katie's become their entry-level commercial product, and in doing so, it's lost what made it special. It's not terrible like Frosty Jacks or fake like Kopparberg, but it's disappointing in a way that's almost worse. It's a good cider that's been deliberately made mediocre to appeal to people who don't really like cider. Stick to Thatcher's other offerings and avoid what Katie's become. Strongbow Original is Britain's best-selling cider, which is like saying Greggs is Britain's best bakery. Popular doesn't mean good, it means it's everywhere, and people buy it out of habit rather than choice. Every Wetherspoons has it, every festival serves it, every bloke who doesn't know any better orders it, and it's absolute mass-produced rubbish that's got barely any apple content and tastes like carbonated sugar water with a vague memory of fruit. The keg version is even worse than the cans. It's been through so much processing, pasteurisation, and carbonation that any character it might have once had has been completely destroyed. Your dad probably drank Strongbow back in the 70s when it was actually half decent, before it got bought and sold by various corporate giants and turned into the liquid equivalent of a value range product dressed up with premium pricing. Original Strongbow isn't trying to be good cider, it's trying to be inoffensive enough that anyone will drink it, cheap enough that pubs will stock it, and profitable enough that shareholders stay happy. None of those priorities have anything to do with quality or taste. It's fizzy, it's cold, it's alcoholic. And that's literally all it's got going for it. If you're drinking Strongbow Original, you're basically telling the world you've given up on the idea that cider should taste good. Crofters is another one of those cheap 3-litre bottle jobs that you find in corner shops next to the problem drinking section. Usually on special offer, always in plastic, never in any pub that respects itself. It's owned by Aston Manor, the same company that makes Old English, which should tell you everything about quality expectations. The taste is thin, chemical, vaguely apple-flavoured in a way that makes you suspect no actual apples were harmed in its production. And it's clearly designed for volume consumption by people who care more about alcohol content than flavour. The label tries to look traditional and countryside wholesome, but that's just marketing covering up industrial cider production at its absolute worst. Your grandson probably bought Crofters once when he was 16 because it was cheap and available and got the job done, then grew up and realised that just because something's alcoholic doesn't mean you should drink it. This is cider made by accountants rather than cider makers, produced to hit a price point rather than a quality standard, and sold to people who either don't know better or can't afford better. The fact that it exists at all is depressing. It shows how far industrial cider production has fallen from the traditional Somerset and Herefordshire cider making that built Britain's reputation. Avoid Crofters unless you're actively trying to punish yourself, and even then, there are better forms of penance available. We're halfway through, and if you've survived our demolition of Britain's worst ciders, stick around because the next 10 are the absolute classics that prove British cider making is still world class. The turnaround starts now. Now we're talking proper cider. Aspel has been making cider in Suffolk since 1728, nearly 300 years, using the same traditional methods, the same orchards, the same bloody-minded commitment to quality that big industrial producers abandoned decades ago. Draft Suffolk cider is 5.5%, beautifully balanced between sweetness and dryness, with proper apple flavour that comes from using actual cider apples rather than concentrate. And chemicals. It's not trying to be trendy or modern or appeal to 20-year-olds. It's just brilliant traditional English cider, made by people who know what they're doing and refuse to compromise. When you drink Aspel, you're tasting 3 centuries of cider-making expertise. Your dad probably discovered Aspel in a proper Suffolk pub sometime in the 80s, and it changed his understanding of what cider could be. Suddenly it wasn't just something for getting drunk in summer, it was complex, interesting, worthy of attention and respect. Aspel remains family-owned, still farms its own orchards, still uses traditional methods that cost more and take longer but make infinitely better cider. The Suffolk cider has won awards, it's respected by cider experts, but more importantly, it's what locals in Suffolk have been drinking for generations, because it's consistently excellent. If you've never tried Aspel, you're missing out on one of Britain's genuine cider treasures, the stuff that proves traditional methods produce better results than industrial shortcuts. Weston's vintage is proper Herefordshire scrumpy, 8.2% strength, made by a family company that's been producing cider in Much Marcle since 1880. This isn't easy drinking summer refreshment. This is serious, complex, grown-up cider that demands respect and rewards attention. It's made from Herefordshire. Bittersweet apples, fermented slowly, matured in oak vats, and the result is rich, tannic, intensely apple-flavoured cider with depth and character that mass-produced rubbish can't touch. 2 pints of vintage on a cold evening is a proper experience, something to savour and think about, rather than just pour down your neck without noticing. Your dad probably tried Weston's vintage on a trip to Herefordshire, or at a beer festival, and realised that cider could be as complex and interesting as proper beer, or wine. That strength doesn't have to mean harshness. That traditional methods produce results worth waiting for. Weston's remains independent and family-owned, refusing buyout offers from corporate giants, still committed to making proper cider properly, even though it would be easier and more profitable to compromise. Vintage represents everything that's good about British cider making. Heritage, quality, integrity, an absolute refusal to take shortcuts. If you think cider is just Strongbow on tap, Weston's vintage will change your mind permanently. Thatcher's Gold is Somerset cider done right, 4.8%, golden and sparkling, with proper apple character balanced by gentle sweetness and crisp finish. It's become Thatcher's flagship product, and unlike Katie, which has been dumbed down for mass appeal, Gold has maintained its quality even as it's become widely available. This is cider for people who actually like cider, not too sweet, not too dry, not trying to taste like fruit juice or alcopops, just honest Somerset cider made from proper cider apples, using traditional methods refined over 4 generations. It's won awards, it's respected by cider experts, but most importantly, it's what ordinary people drink when they want proper cider. Your mate probably switched to Thatcher's Gold years ago when he got tired of mass-produced rubbish and wanted something with actual flavour, and he's been drinking it ever since because it's consistently excellent and widely available. The fact that Thatcher's remains family-owned and Somerset-based while producing cider at this scale is genuinely impressive. They've managed to go mainstream without selling out, to achieve distribution without compromising quality, to appeal to ordinary drinkers without insulting their intelligence. Gold represents modern British cider making at its best, respecting tradition while not being imprisoned by it, making excellent cider that's accessible rather than exclusive. If you're only going to drink one modern cider, make it Thatcher's Gold. Dunkerton's has been making proper Herefordshire cider since 1988, and their organic dry is traditional cider making done right. 6% strength, bone dry, made entirely from organic. Herefordshire cider apples grown without chemicals or shortcuts. This is cider for grown-ups who want the real thing. Intensely apple-flavoured, slightly tannic, complex and interesting rather than sweet and simple. Ivor and Susie Dunkerton could easily make their cider cheaper, faster, easier, but they're committed to organic farming and traditional methods because they believe it makes better cider. And they're absolutely right. It's unfiltered, unpasteurised, alive with natural character that comes from proper apples rather than laboratories. Your dad probably discovered Dunkertons at a food festival or specialist shop and was amazed that organic cider could taste this good, this authentic, this completely different from supermarket rubbish. The organic certification isn't just marketing. It means their orchards are havens for wildlife. Their methods are sustainable. Their cider is as natural as it gets in an age of industrial food production. Dunkerton's Organic Dry has won awards. It's respected by cider experts. But more importantly, it's what proper traditional Herefordshire cider tastes like when it's made without compromise. If you think organic means expensive and pretentious, Dunkerton's proves that organic just means better. Better for the environment, better for the apples, better in your glass. Oliver's represents the new generation of traditional cider making. Started in 2004 by Tom Oliver using old Herefordshire orchards and vintage equipment rescued from abandoned cider farms. Herefordshire Dry is proper scrumpy, 7.5%, made using methods that predate industrialisation, when cider making was farming rather than manufacturing. It's bone dry, intensely apple flavoured, slightly funky in the way proper traditional cider should be. And it's a million miles from sanitised supermarket cider. This is cider for people who want the real thing. Unfiltered, unpasteurised, alive with natural yeasts and character that comes from actual apples rather than laboratories. Your son probably discovered Oliver's at a craft beer pub or festival and had his mind blown by the realisation that proper traditional cider still exists, that not everything's been homogenised and industrialised, that somewhere in Herefordshire, a madman's making cider the way his great-great-granddad would have done. Tom Oliver could make his cider easier, faster, cheaper, but he deliberately chooses difficult traditional methods because they make better cider, and that integrity shows in every sip. Oliver's has won international awards, it's respected by cider experts worldwide, but more importantly, it's keeping traditional Herefordshire cider making alive when it could easily have died out completely. If you want to taste what British cider tasted like before corporations got involved, drink Oliver's. Cornish orchards. Gold proves that brilliant cider isn't just made in Somerset and Herefordshire. Cornwall's been growing apples and making cider for centuries, and this 5% beauty is traditional Cornish cider at its absolute best. It's medium dry, perfectly balanced, with rich apple flavours that come from using proper Cornish cider apples, rather than eating apples or concentrate. The orchards are on the Duchy of Cornwall estate, which means they've been making cider here since medieval times, and that continuity of tradition shows in every bottle. This is cider that tastes like Cornwall, proper countryside character, not sanitised for mass appeal. Your daughter probably discovered Cornish orchards on holiday in Cornwall and was pleasantly surprised that something touristy could actually be excellent rather than overpriced rubbish for visitors. The company only started in 1992, but they're using traditional Cornish orchards and methods that go back centuries, giving you centuries of heritage in a relatively modern package. It's won awards, it's stocked nationally now, but it's maintained quality, even as distribution has expanded. Unlike most ciders that go mainstream and immediately compromise Cornish orchards, Gold represents regional British cider making at its best, distinctively Cornish, but world-class in quality, traditional but not old-fashioned, excellent but accessible. If you've written off Cornish cider as tourist rubbish, Gold will change your mind. Right, controversial after we slated the draft version, but Magna's original in bottles, served properly over ice, is genuinely decent Irish cider that deserves respect for changing how Britain drinks cider. Before Magna's launched in Britain in 2006, cider was something blokes drank warm in dodgy pubs. Then suddenly everyone was drinking it, ice cold from bottles in beer gardens, and cider sales doubled practically overnight. The bottled version is 4.5%, crisp and refreshing, with proper apple character that actually tastes like apples rather than chemicals. Yes, it's mass-produced by C&C Group, but unlike most industrial ciders, Magna's has maintained decent quality even at scale. Your mate probably started drinking Magners when it first became trendy in the mid-2000s. Thought he was being sophisticated with his cider over ice. And you know what? He was right. Magners proved that cider could be premium, could be aspirational, could be something you chose rather than settled for, and that cultural shift was genuinely important. The bottled version is consistent, reliable, widely available, and while it's not as complex or interesting as proper Somerset or Herefordshire cider, it's honest and decent rather than cynical rubbish. If you're at a pub with limited cider options, bottled Magners served over ice is a perfectly acceptable choice. Just avoid the draft version that's trading on the bottled version's reputation while delivering something completely different. Sheppey's has been making cider in Somerset since 1917, family owned for 4 generations, and Dabanet is their single variety premium cider made entirely from Dabanet apples, one of the classic Somerset cider apple varieties. It's 7.5% medium sweet, with intense apple flavour that's distinctively Dabanet, slightly tannic, beautifully balanced, complex in ways that blended ciders can't match. This is cider for people who care about what they're drinking, who want to taste the specific characteristics of individual apple varieties, who appreciate craft and expertise over mass production convenience. Sheppey's could easily simplify their range and chase volume, but they're committed to traditional Somerset cider making, even though it's harder and less profitable. Your dad probably visited Sheppey's farm in Somerset years ago, tried their range, bought a few bottles of Dabanet to bring home, and spent the next few months trying to find it locally because it was that good. Single variety ciders are like single malt whiskies. They show you what's possible when you focus on quality and character rather than broad appeal. When you let the raw ingredients shine rather than blending everything into homogeneous mediocrity. Dabanet represents traditional Somerset cider making at its finest. Proper cider apples, traditional methods, family expertise spanning generations, absolute refusal to compromise. If you've only ever drunk supermarket cider, Sheppey's Dabanet will blow your mind. Gwatkin is tiny compared to industrial cider producers, just a small farm in Herefordshire, where Dennis Gwatkin makes proper traditional cider using organic apples from his own orchards and neighbouring farms. Yarlington Mill is single variety cider at 8%, made entirely from Yarlington Mill apples, one of the great Herefordshire cider varieties, and the result is intensely complex, properly dry, slightly tannic cider that tastes like the Herefordshire countryside distilled into liquid form. This is as far from Strongbow as you can possibly get. Unfiltered, unpasteurised, alive with natural yeasts, made by hand in tiny batches by someone who cares more about quality than profit. Your son probably discovered Gwatkin at a specialist cider festival or craft beer shop and couldn't believe that cider could taste this good, this real, this completely different from anything he'd tried before. Dennis Gwatkin could industrialise his production, compromise his standards, chase profit margins, but he doesn't because he's making cider the way his ancestors would have made it, preserving traditional Herefordshire cider making when it would be easier to give up and sell out. Yarlington Mill has won awards, it's respected internationally by cider experts, but more importantly, it's keeping alive craft skills and traditions that nearly disappeared. If you can find Gwatkin, and it's not easy, buy it immediately because this is British cider making heritage in a bottle. Celtic Marches makes cider on the Welsh-Herefordshire border, and Black Mountain is their premium 5% offering. Rich, complex oak-aged cider with depth and character that comes from proper traditional methods meeting modern craft expertise. It's made from rare Herefordshire cider apples, including varieties that nearly went extinct, fermented slowly, matured in oak barrels, and the result is sophisticated grown-up cider that challenges any wine for complexity and interest. This isn't mass-market cider trying to appeal to everyone. It's craft cider for people who appreciate quality, who want something distinctive and special, who understand that excellence costs more but delivers infinitely better results. Your mate probably tried Black Mountain at a fancy restaurant or gastropub where it was paired with proper food, realised that cider could be as sophisticated as wine, and started seeking it out because normal cider suddenly seemed boring. By comparison, Celtic Marches has won international awards, including golds at major competitions, proving that British craft cider can compete with anything in the world when it's made properly by people who care. The fact that they're using rare apple varieties means they're preserving biodiversity and cider-making heritage that would otherwise be lost. Every bottle of Black Mountain is supporting traditional orchards and craft skills. If you want to impress someone who thinks they're too sophisticated for cider, pour them Black Mountain and watch their preconceptions shatter. There you have it, 10 British ciders to pour straight down the sink, and 10 absolute classics that prove Britain still makes world-class cider when it's done properly. If this made you thirsty, angry, or nostalgic for proper countryside pubs, hit that subscribe button and watch the next video on screen, where we rank something else that'll get you arguing in the comments. Cheers.